Great. Welcome to the neighborhood meeting.
Just 1 second. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Heather, I see Dave
ahead.
is trying to raise his hand. How do you want to manage these the calls when they come in? Do you want to do them during or after?
How do you have it on your PowerPoint? You have it public participation first. So if you want to do the intro and then we can get to that.
Well, I mean, I got like almost 100 slides to go through. I got 90 slides to go through. I'm fine taking questions during the presentation, but it'd be best if questions were held to the end. But I can do them. I can do them either way.
Okay, I do see his hand was just put down. So,
but I mean, if he has something he wants to talk about before we get going, we could certainly, listen in or see what the question is.
okay, his hand's up. Go ahead, Dave, and talk. I just unmuted him. You have to unmute your mic.
How's that?
There you go.
Okay. Just testing it out. I'll put my hand down now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You want to flip back to the original slide? All right. I see it's 7:02. I think we got all the audio and video quirks worked out here, so I think we're ready to go. I'd like to welcome you to this neighborhood meeting. We will be discussing proposed drainage improvements in the Pheasant Run neighborhood. Next, Heather. For public participation using the Zoom application, you can use the raise hand function, just as Dave had done. For those with some devices may not have audio functionality, and you can call into the Zoom meeting using the toll-free dial-in numbers here. You will need the meeting ID and the password numbers here that are shown on the screen, and then use *9 to be recognized, and Heather will get you into the meeting at that point. I'll pause here for a few moments to let folks write down these numbers in case they're needed. These numbers, this slide is also repeated at the end of the presentation in case folks join us late and or you need to get the numbers at that point.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay, you can move on then. Next slide. My name is Gary Furstenberg. I'm the town engineer. Here is my contact information. My contact information is also in the letter you had received inviting you to this neighborhood meeting. Next slide. I'd like to thank the town manager, engineering staff, highway staff, and park staff for support of this project, and also thank the town clerk staff and town manager staff for supporting this this presentation or this anyhow. In this presentation, I'll be talking about the existing conditions, corridor history. We'll be reviewing engineering data and planning data. We'll discuss 4 solutions that we had considered. We will discuss one solution that is the recommended solution, as well as the cost and schedule associated with that solution. Next. All right, here is the project corridor, highlighted in red here. The area is Willard Avenue is on the east, New Britain Avenue on the south, Maple Hill Avenue on the west, Robbins Avenue up here on the north. Immediately the north and abutting the project is Pheasant Run, and immediately on the south is the Harris Drive neighborhood. For reference, here is Town Hall, Indian Hills Country Club, and the Clem Lemire Sports Complex. Next slide. For the public outreach for this meeting, I had sent letters to all the properties that bought the corridor and the work zone. That is 23 residents on Pheasant Run, 12 residents on Harris Drive, and 2 businesses down here on New Britain Avenue. Next slide. The parcel we're talking about is referred to as 1331 Willard Avenue. It is owned by the town of Newington. It's been owned by the town of Newington for about 19 years now. It's about 40 acres in size, and it's zoned open space. Next. Here is the existing conditions of the site from the GIS system that the town has. Here you see the blue are the existing drainage system in Pheasant Run, and the existing drainage system, fairly extensive system in the Harris Drive neighborhood, as well as private drainage for the church and private drainage down for the nursing home. Next slide. The problem we're trying to solve here is water, high flows of water, which cause erosion, wet yards, icing conditions, and fallen trees. In summary, you're going to see this the contours here, many slides throughout the presentation, but the west end here drains to the west here. The east end drains to the east. The middle part of the town property drains to the north across the private properties on Pheasant Run, and therein lies the problem that we're trying to solve. Next slide. So many of you, when you look out at the town parcel from your backyards, this is probably what many of you see, a mature forest with a sparse understory. Next slide. What happens is there's a low area on the town parcel. It fills up with water. This is the area that I call the bowl. So once the bowl fills up with water, next slide. The bowl overflows. The water results in a river, essentially, flowing across people's backyards. Oh, Heather, can you go back one slide? We result in this river of water flowing across the residential backyards. Not a pretty situation we have here. Okay, next slide. Resulting in wet yards, saturated yards. Essentially, the residents, they tell me that they can't even cut the grass sometimes in the summertime because the yards are so wet. Next slide. The erosion conditions we had talked about, just soil eroding from the town property and the residential properties. Not a pretty sight in anybody's backyard or side yard here. Next slide. Results in the water and saturates the ground, results in fallen trees. Obviously, the water doesn't tip the trees over, but it makes the ground soft. The root systems are compromised. It doesn't take much of a windstorm to blow over trees, and there are a number of down trees in the town parcel. Next slide. Further existing conditions are just encroachments that we find on the town parcel, where people access the town parcel and use it for their personal benefit. Next slide. And we've found during our site reconnaissance that we've done when we've been out on the sites, we found lots of trash out on the site and debris. It looks like a washing machine or a dryer on the left-hand side, a chair, a tire, and kids' toys, among many other trash items and debris that we found out there. Next slide. As a part of our reconnaissance, we've located some property corners to help us better understand where our parcel is and what areas we can work on. Next slide. So I'm going to have about 10 or 15 slides here where I'm going to talk about the corridor history. Many of these slides are aerial photographs from the University of Connecticut Aerial Photography Archive. Next slide. This property prior to 1967 was owned by various private property owners. The Connecticut Department of Transportation owned the parcel for about 34 years, from 1967 to 2001. Since 2001, the town has owned the parcel, and we will continue to own the parcel. Thanks, Heather. Here's the earliest aerial photograph that I have, 1951. The red area highlighted is the parcel that we're talking about. At this point, it's owned by about 6 different private property owners, and the land is used for agricultural purposes for the most part. Next slide. Here's some remnants of past land uses, some fence posts that we found on the town parcel. Probably fence posts. I'm just speculating. It could be property boundaries. They could be pastures for fields or whatever. Just evidence of past land use. Next slide. Here's the 1954 Ramblewood subdivision. This slide here is showing the west end. Here is the central portion of Pheasant Run. Pheasant Run here, Frederick Drive coming in. When you see this little bump out, that's the area of concern here. And the slide at the top here is the west end, or sorry, the east end of Pheasant Run with Willard Avenue down here on the far right. Next slide. There's a street plan, 1959 for Pheasant Run. Looks pretty similar to what was built in the field. Next slide. 1964 subdivision plan. Again, it's laid out pretty much almost exactly the way it was built in the field with the lots. Some of the lots down here have not been built due to the wetlands, but obviously back in the early days, in the turn of the last century, wetlands were not an issue as they are these days. Next slide. Here is the 1966 grading and utility plans for the Ramblewood subdivision. Again, here's the west end of Pheasant Run, the central portion of Pheasant Run, and the eastern portion of Pheasant Run. Next slide. Here's a detail of the central image that I just showed you in the previous slide. Here is Pheasant Run, and here is Frederick. This shows the contours, which are the ground surface. The ground surface indicates drainage patterns, and you're going to continue to see these very same drainage patterns from prior to when it was developed to the current day. You know, see the drainage to the west. If you look further to the east, you would see drainage to the east, and here is showing drainage to the north across the private properties. Next slide, please. In the 1960s, the Connecticut Department of Transportation developed an extensive expressway system throughout and around the Hartford metropolitan area. Obviously, not all those expressways were built. Next slide. So in 1967, the Connecticut Department of Transportation acquired all this parcel, and many other parcels in town from various private property owners. These parcels in particular, they were required via quitclaim deeds, fees, condemnation, and so on for use for the proposed Interstate 291 corridor. At this point in 1970, Pheasant Run, the road has been constructed, and most of the houses on the east end have been constructed, but the houses near the top of the hill here, they have not yet been constructed in 1970. Next slide, please. Here is more detail of the Hartford bypasses. Interstate 291 was proposed to start in Rocky Hill, run through Newington, extend up north through West Hartford and Bloomfield, tie into the existing 291 expressway. I-491 was an extension of Route 3, crossing the Connecticut River, passing through Glastonbury and East Hartford. Again, obviously, many of those expressways were not built, but some were. So these are the plans showing the I-291 corridor. Here you see this is the west end, the central portion, and the eastern portion of Pheasant Run. The green line here, the green shaded area is Maple Hill. Here is where Frederick ties into Pheasant Run, and the green line on as the far west end is Willard Avenue. You're going to see 2 main lines running through the middle. This would be the baseline for the westbound line, or the westbound roadway. This is the baseline for the eastbound roadway. So it was a true expressway system. Next slide, please. Here are detailed development plans of the expressway system. Here's Willard Avenue, I'm sorry, Maple Hill Avenue, where the expressway crosses. Here are more detailed design plans for the expressway where it crosses Willard Avenue. The DOT, they had also planned on an interchange at the Berlin Turnpike as well as Willard Avenue for accessing it'd be a limited access expressway. Next slide. So here in 1981, the Connecticut Department of Transportation, they owned all of the lots on, I can't say all, they owned many lots or several lots on the south side of Pheasant Run that had not yet been developed. And so here is a plot plan for lots 53, 54, and 55, also known as 119, 125, and 135 Pheasant Run. This is where these lots were deemed surplus property, and the state sold off the surplus lots that they were not going to use for the expressway. And here you can see that the remainder of the parcels beyond or further south of the private properties were owned by the town of Connecticut, or not the town of Connecticut, the state of Connecticut. So moving on, in 1984, shortly after those plot plans were developed, residents had built houses, and shortly thereafter, say 3 years later, residents realized that there was a problem with the drainage. The resident at 135 Pheasant Run had filed a drainage agreement with the town to install a private drainage system on that property and extend it and tie it into and connect into the town drainage system in the road. So just pointing out that there was problems early from the get-go, shortly after the houses were built, that there was drainage problems in the neighborhood. So 1986, the state of Connecticut owns the parcel, and here you can see some houses were being built here at the top of the hill, and those include those parcels that we had just talked about: 119, 125, and 135. Next slide. Here's the plot plan for 119 Pheasant Run, 1986 plan for development of that lot. Next slide. Aerial photograph 1990. Again, the state of Connecticut continues to own the parcel, but at this point, the state has abandoned the I-291 corridor, and they're not going to build the expressway. That's what the dash lines show here. These are abandoned expressways at that point. Next slide. So essentially, 1995, this whole corridor has become surplus property owned by the state of Connecticut. And next slide. They are looking to either sell or they give these parcels to the town. At this point, in 2001, the town acquired the parcel from the state of Connecticut via a quitclaim deed. And so since 2001, the parcel's been owned by the town of Newington. And you can see it's just it's undeveloped land. It's never been developed for an expressway. No grading, nothing's really happened on that parcel really since the agricultural use stopped back in the 60s. Next slide. This is the last and most current aerial photograph that I have. Again, showing that the parcel is undeveloped. Really, nothing's really happened on the parcel. No grading, no development. It's zoned open space as it continues to be open space. Next slide. All right, we're going to review some engineering data. Next slide. And that's going to consist of topographic maps produced by the United States Geologic Survey. What these maps are going to show is the topography, which is the ground surface and elevations, and the ground surface will dictate and control drainage patterns throughout the site. Again, here's the earliest topographic map that I have showing drainage to the east, drainage to the west on the west end, drainage to the east on the east end, and drainage to the north in the central portion of the site. I'm just going to zip through. I got about 5 or 6 of these slides. You can see the exact same drainage patterns. So when you go to the next slide, 1964, again, you see the same topography, the same drainage patterns to the west, the north, and the south. Next slide. 1972, again, the same pattern to the west, to the north, and the south, the drainage patterns. Next slide. 1984, again, broken record here, but drainage to the west, drainage to the north, drainage to the east. Next slide. And 1992. So essentially from 1944, the first slide, to 1992, essentially there's been no change in the grading patterns and the drainage patterns on this parcel. And when you go on to the next slide, Heather, this is the town, a map from the town USGS, not USGS, the town GIS system. Again, it shows virtually the same drainage patterns, drainage to the west, drainage to the east, and drainage to the north. This little blue dot, that's where I call the bowl. Water, once this bowl fills up here, then the water drains across the private properties here, like 135, 125, 119. Again, you can see the drainage pattern here in Harris Drive. It all drains to the west. It's a fairly extensive drainage network, like I'd mentioned. You can see the contours here at the church property. They virtually all drain to the south. Next slide, please. Looking at the regional hydrology, we are near a topographic high spot. The purple line is a boundary between two different watersheds. So water in the western part of this slide drains to Webster Brook, the Webster Brook watershed. Water in the eastern part of this slide drains to the east to Mill Brook and is part of the Mill Brook watershed. Next slide, please. We had looked at the site hydrology using our design point as the blue dot out here in the street. This is a catch basin. The green dot is also a design point that we had used. This is where the water would leave the town parcel and flow across the private properties. The area that we analyzed is about a 5-acre watershed. We evaluated overland flow, meaning water that's just flowing on the ground across the ground surface, as well as water in the pipes, the extensive piping network that's in Pheasant Run. We did that using a hydraulic analysis using software called Hydrology Studio. Next slide. And in doing the analysis, we analyzed both the 2-year and the 10-year storm. For design of stormwater pipes, the stormwater pipes are simply only designed for a 10-year storm. We just can't afford to design for a 50 or 100 or 200-year storms. We just couldn't simply afford to install systems that would be able to convey that much water. So the existing conditions, we evaluated both the existing conditions and some proposed conditions. The existing conditions, for the 2-year storm, the pipes in Pheasant Run, the pipes are surcharged. What that means is that the pipes are flowing full. Drainage pipes are designed to be gravity flow, but however, when the pipes are flowing full, then they become pressure pipes, and that's just not simply how storm drains are designed. They're not designed to be pressure pipes. When we analyzed the 10-year storm, the system was overflowing and there's water in the street, and that's simply not acceptable. It's not an acceptable condition. So what we're saying is that the pipes are, the piping network in Pheasant Run is undersized. We analyzed the proposed system. So in order to convey more water, we upsize or we increase the size of the pipes in Pheasant Run. This is something easy to do on paper, very complex to do in the field. Obviously, no construction has been done in the field, but we hypothetically analyzed if we increase the size of the pipes in the street to handle enough water. So we were good with the 2-year storm, and we were able to increase the pipes enough that we could carry the water of the 10-year storm without water flowing in the street. However, the system is still surcharged. It's not an ideal system, not an ideal solution, but it could work. Next slide. We're looking at planning data next. Next slide. Looking at the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD as Plan of Conservation and Development. Looking at the open space plan the town has. This is the plan for the entire town. Here's a blow up of the site. The red area is the parcel that we're talking about, and the light green shade is open space for the town. This light green space is right here. Essentially, this part of that's all shaded green was part of the 291 corridor. In fact, where the Connecticut Department of Transportation headquarters was also part of the I-291 corridor. That's where the interchange for 291 and Route 5 would have been had they not built or had the project not been abandoned. All right, next slide. Here is the natural resources plan from the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development. The dark green areas here show wetlands. So there's wetlands at the far western end of the site, and there's wetlands here at the far eastern end of the site. Fortunately, there are no wetlands here in the high ground area here, in the area that we've been analyzing and talking about, and we'll continue to talk about. All right, next slide. We talked, there's 4 solutions that we evaluated, that we considered. Next slide. The objectives of the solutions were to reduce erosion, reduce water in the neighbors' yards, reduce icing conditions, and reduce fallen trees. Any solution that we come up with must be low or no maintenance. We'd like to avoid private property impacts and easements on private properties for any sort of design, maintenance, construction, and so on. We want to keep the water in the existing watershed. I'll get into that, why that's important a little bit later on. We'd like to have a comprehensive solution. We don't want to have a solution that just benefits 1 or 2 neighbors, or a solution that just moves the problem somewhere else. It needs to be a comprehensive solution that benefits the entire neighborhood and not just a few. Finally, we'd like to have a solution here that would be that the town staff could construct with our own equipment to reduce the project cost. Next slide. Considerations that other factors that we considered is cost, and cost. We also considered impacts to the private properties and impacts to the neighborhood, as well as disturbance to the town land, and of course environmental impacts to the town parcel. Next slide. Like I mentioned, there's four design considerations that we had considered. There's 2 earthwork considerations and 2 piping network considerations. The first consideration is a swale to the east, that built on town land. Number 2 is a swale to the west, built on town land. The first piping network is a short pipe, a 230-foot pipe on private property. And item 4 is a vast, extensive drainage system improvement piping network of over 1,600 feet, so over a quarter mile of piping. Next slide. I've got graphics here that show each of those options and design considerations. Here's what I call solution 1A, which is a swale to the east. The green is the area that we're talking about working in. It consists of an 800-foot long swale, an 800-foot long berm, with all the work being done on town property. Next slide. Here is a detail of that area. A blow up. Oh, next slide, Heather. There you go. Yes, thank you. Here is a blow up of that area that we're talking about. It consists of a V-shaped swale with 4-to-1 side slopes, a minimum channel slope of 1%. Maximum cut of I think it's about 4 feet here. It consists of a berm 1 to 2 feet high, and the impacted area is just a little less than 1 acre. Next slide. So when we went out in the field to see to evaluate the actual construction and building that sort of a swale, we encountered encroachments in the field, which encroachments are sheds and bird houses and other landscaped areas that residents have built on the town property. So after we encountered the encroachments, we realized we had to modify the concept. Next slide. So the modified concept was what I call a solution 1B. It's a revised drainage swale to the east. What we did is we offset the whole project about 30 feet south to avoid the encroachments. It still consists of an 800-foot long swale with an 800-foot long berm, all on town property. Next slide. This option, or this design option, consists of a 4-to-1 side slopes with a minimum 1% slope, just as we had for the first option 1A. However, the maximum cut increases from 4 feet to 6 feet due to realigning the slope, or not the slope, realigning the swale further 30 feet further south, results in a berm a little bit higher than the other berm, and the impacted area is a little bit larger than 1 acre. So it's a little more work to do this, but it all works. Next slide, thank you. Solution 2 is a drainage swale to the west. Again, it's shown in green here. It's a much shorter system. It's only a 400-foot long swale with a 300-foot long berm. All the work is on town property again. Next slide. Here is that area, the green area in detail again. Same 4-to-1 side slopes for the channel. Minimum 1% slope on the channel, maximum 4-foot cut. Small berm 1 to 2 feet high. The impacted area is about 0.8 of an acre. Next slide. Essentially, in summary, item or solution 2, it has the least amount of land disturbance at 0.8 acres. However, it's not recommended because we're moving the water to different watersheds. The area that we're talking about is here, and the first option for swale number 1 drained the water to the west. Now we're talking about taking this water and draining to the first option drained to the east. For option 2, we're talking about taking the water here and draining it to the west, and we're crossing the purple line. The purple line is the drainage watershed that we had talked about early on. And here, in this case, we're taking the water from the Millbrook watershed and we're dumping it into the Webster Brook watershed. Furthermore, why this is undesirable is down here, this western end of Pheasant Run does have existing drainage problems and poor drainage already, and dumping any more water in there is just not a desirable solution. All right, next slide. Solution 3. This is the first piping solution. It's a short pipe, about 230 feet of HDPE pipe. That's high density polyethylene pipe, plastic pipe, installing a catch basin on the town property and connecting that new catch basin to the existing catch basin out in Pheasant Run. It involves an easement crossing 2 private properties, an easement to install the pipe, and an easement to maintain the pipe and catch basin. Like I said, mentioned, we're connecting to the existing drainage system in Pheasant Run. Installing the catch basin down on the town property, it all sounds great and simple and easy. However, based on experiences, when we have catch basins that are in areas that we really can't get to, and areas that are in wooded areas, maintenance becomes very problematic, and that we can't get to. We have to cross private property to get to them. They often become forgot. They become plugged and inoperable, and essentially what we fear is that we'll end up with the same problems that we have today, even if we were to put this, even if we were to construct or install this solution. Next slide, please. So like I said, this option was not recommended due to the easements and due to the increased and frequent maintenance for the catch basin. Next slide. So here is the system-wide drainage improvements for Pheasant Run. This involves installing more than 1/4 mile of pipe. It's piping all the way from the high point at Frederick all the way down to just short of Willard Avenue. It's 360 feet of 18-inch pipe in the upper end here. Transition to 660 feet of HDPE pipe in the mid part, 340 feet of 30-inch pipe at the eastern end, and increasing the outlet pipe that cuts through the private properties and goes back to the wetlands, 240 feet of 36-inch pipe. This is just an extensive, very high impact type project for the neighborhood. Next slide, please. This option, as you probably guessed, is very, very costly. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not recommended due to the cost. The cost is driven by the length of pipe, the number of catch basins, dealing with all the water service laterals and the sewer service laterals that we'd have to cross with the project. Significant impacts to the neighborhood. We still need easements easement for the pipe down here and an easement for the pipe at the western end or the eastern end. Just that this system is really not practical at this time. Next slide. All right, recommended solution. Next slide. So as you probably guessed, as we're going through the different options, the option that we are recommending is the revised swale to the east. That's the purple contours that we had talked about earlier on. Essentially, this is going to be a swale that's going to convey water during storms, and between storms, it's going to be dry. Next slide. The scope of work for this earthwork project is very typical for any earthwork project. We're going to stake the work in the field, remove trash and debris in the work zone, clear brush, post the trees that need to be removed. We're going to cut down trees that are in the work zone. We're going to install erosion controls around the work zone. We're going to grade the swale. We're going to grade the berm and then restore the disturbed area. I have slides that can demonstrate this. So access to the work zone would be from from the western end of the parcel that actually abuts Pheasant Run. We do cross the blue line is essentially the access way. We do cross about 200 feet of upland review area. That is not wetlands. Essentially, upland review areas are areas within 100 feet of the wetland, but we're not in the wetland. We're just crossing part of the upland review area. This work crossing the upland review area would be by general permit number 1. I've notified the wetland agent of this potential project, and he has notified the Conservation Commission of the potential impacts to the wetlands, which are again just simply crossing the upland review area. Next slide. So staking the work in the field, we would drive wooden stakes in the ground, put ribbons on them so that the construction workers can see them. They'll be marked with certain field information like cut, fill, and so on, clear zones, erosion controls, and so on. Then we would need to remove any trash and debris in the construction zone, and there is a lot of trash and debris out there. Next slide. More trash and debris. It's very discouraging seeing all the trash and debris out there. But moving on to clearing brush using a brush hog mounted to the skidster. We'd post trees in coordination with the town tree warden like this. And then next, any trees in the work zone would need to be cut down and cleared for grading. Essentially, when we raise the ground or cut the ground, it's going to damage any trees or the root systems of any trees, and those trees would not survive. So they're removed as a part of the construction work. Next. We'd install erosion controls around the work zone. On the left is what we call wattles. On the right is silt fence. You probably wouldn't see 2 rows of silt fence like this. That would be excessive or overkill for our project, but in some cases 2 rows are needed. So this is wattles and silt fence we're seeing here that would be installed around the work zone. We would grade the swale, cut the swale using a bulldozer like you see on the left, and leave us a V-shaped swale like you see on the right. Next. And again, we would grade the berm using the bulldozer here that you see on the right, and leaving us a swale like you might see on the left. Essentially, not a swale, leaving us a berm like you would see on the left there. The berm would be between the swale and the private properties. So essentially, make it virtually impossible for any water to cross the berm and get onto private properties. Next slide. And then finally, once the project is done, we would restore the disturbed area, resulting in a vegetated swale, which would control erosion. Next slide. Design would be in accordance with the town of Newington standards, as well as state of Connecticut DOT and DEP guidance. Next slide. So I think with that option 1B, I think we've hit the target. We've obtained our objectives, or we've achieved our objectives. Primarily, we have no road closures, no lane closures, no private property easements, no private property impacts. All the work is on town property, and including access via town property. Costs for this project, next slide. I've looked at the cost for all 4 options. Essentially, the first 3 options, those costs are very similar in nature, about $10,000. So in detail, the swale to the east, the materials would be about $12,000. The swale to the west is a little bit shorter, about $8,000. The short drainage pipe is about $10,000. The extensive pipe and drainage network is more than an order of magnitude more than those costs. We're talking about $200,000. These costs I'm talking about are material costs only. Again, the reason why we're doing that is because the town plans to provide the labor and equipment to do the work. Next slide. Schedule. We're almost finished with this year. Next slide. So throughout the year 2020, at our public works meeting, we've been discussing this project fairly extensively. We assessed the need, we've talked with residents, we've prepared conceptual designs, we've located our property corners and encroachments in the field. We surveyed the drainage system, we evaluated the drainage system for the existing and proposed conditions. We've revised concepts based on field conditions. Right now it's November 2020. The park staff and highway staff, they're collecting leaves throughout town. It's an ongoing process. Hopefully they'll finish up within the next week or two here. Today is November 23rd. We are doing the public outreach for this project. Our plan for construction of this project, if everything is a go, it could start as soon as December 2020 and continue through winter 2021. This would be highway and parks. It would be their priority number 2. Obviously, during the winter, priority number 1 is snow and ice removal from town roads. So it would be used as filler work between snow plowing and other operations that the highways and parks staff would be assigned to. That's our game plan at this point. Next slide. With that, I'm at the end of the slides. We'll entertain questions, comments, concerns, discussion, and here is the last slide for the phone numbers for folks that need to dial into the presentation using the 800 numbers. With that, I'll open the presentation up to public discussion.
Do you see it on your screen, Gary, or no?
I see 2 participants raise their hand.
Okay.
Do you let them in, or how do I do that?
I can do it. I will do Peter.
Go for it. Thank you. Peter, you on? Peter, I'm not hearing you.
He has to unmute. Go ahead, Peter. Peter, you can talk. You're unmuted. Is your mic on?
Can you hear me now?
I can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay. My question is, once you have the V-shaped swale built and you are going to grass it, who's going to maintain it, and what will prevent erosion taking place there, filling the swale, as well as stuff falling into it?
Essentially, at that point, the town would have to maintain the swale. Hopefully residents don't dump leaves and grass cuttings and stuff in the swale and fill it up. I mean, that'd be a shame if that happened, but I mean, we do see that. But the town would maintain it. It's town property. The town will maintain it.
I got a question.
But I mean, it's intended to be a low maintenance type system. It should be self-cleaning for the most part.
Who's got cold beer?
Did I answer your question, Peter?
I'm sorry. Yes, it does. As I said, one of my concerns is over a period of time, the water running down through that, would that create more erosion within the swale and causing other concerns, maybe water tables or?
Good question, Peter. Essentially at a 1% slope, that's a pretty gentle slope. So I do not anticipate erosion within the swale. However, I mean, if we get big, heavy storm events, while the vegetation is being established, it's possible. And at that point, the town's going to have to go back out and address any sort of erosion that develops, during the construction process, and until the swale becomes fully vegetated. And once the swale is vegetated, it would, the vegetation should maintain or control erosion.
Yeah, understood. And one other question I have too, and I realize it's sort of a more personal thing, is the wildlife that we have coming through here. Anybody take a look at the effect that may have on them?
I guess it's just like anywhere else, when wildlife lives in the forest. When you remove the trees in that habitat, they move somewhere else.
Yeah,
if that becomes a driving issue, well, we did consider some, environmental impacts. The thing is, we're not aware of any endangered species or endangered habitats or anything like that. That's what I'm aware of. Is, I'm just saying, white-tailed deer, they live anywhere. Stuff like that. Other animals, squirrels, they live in any forest. I'm envisioning that they would move on and find another wooded area to live in. I mean, the fact is, we're not going to cut down everything. We're not going to clear cut the whole thing. I mean, essentially, we're only clearing the areas that would be disturbed. So much of the forest would remain intact.
okay. Yeah, it was just that we enjoy seeing the deer come through here and the occasional coyote, and it would be sad to see them disappear because of a man-made barrier, if anything.
Well, getting back to, like I said, this is a 40-acre parcel, and the area of impact is about 1 acre. So, I mean, it's just not, it's really not significant in my opinion. The fact that, there's 39 other acres plus everything else around the abutting parcel where they can live too. We're only impacting 1 acre, really. Again, like it's not, there's no endangered species, no endangered habitats that we're aware of.
And one other question now, as the water runs east, the swale is going to gradually disappear as it heads down Pheasant Run, or is it going to be cut all the way to Willard Avenue?
No, it would not be cut all the way to Willard Avenue. I will admit that once the further east we get, it becomes very, very dense, and the understory becomes much thicker than the photo that I showed early on in the presentation. I've not walked it all the way down to Willard, but our plan would not be to extend it all the way down to Willard, but we would grade it and shape it and give the water a definitive path for a good chunk. Like I say, almost 800 feet.
Okay. Yeah, that was again, that wouldn't affect me, but it would affect, people I know down at the other end of the street. And I was concerned that they suddenly would have a flood situation.
Well, the residents we've primarily talked to are further on toward the top of the hill, and we've talked to them in fairly great detail. When I've been out in the field doing field reconnaissance for various purposes at various times of the year, we have talked to other residents. They have expressed concerns about wet yards and water running onto their properties too. So again, it goes back to we're looking for a comprehensive neighborhood solution, not just a solution that benefits one or two.
Yeah. Okay, you've answered all my questions. I appreciate that. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Peter. Hey, Peter, would you mind shoot me an email with your address if you would, please?
Okay, well, I don't mind telling you. It's 103.
Okay. On Pheasant Run?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Nice talking to you. I know I've talked to many residents on the in the field, so nice talking to you.
Yes.
Okay, the next person is Jeff. I'm gonna unmute them.
Yes, I have a question about the berm. I was wondering, how big is that going to be? What is the size of that berm? What are we going to be looking at? A big mound, 6 feet high? Can you describe what you're thinking?
Yes, I'll try to. Early we envisioned early on, like a short berm, maybe 1 to 2, 3 feet, 1 to 2 feet high. Once we modified the drainage swale, we had to once we pushed it further to the south and the cuts became larger, we realized that the berm it could be, 2 to 3, maybe 4 feet high at most, I would think. But I think what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to spread it out. I do want a berm that's, at least 1 to 2 feet high. I don't want to see a berm, and nobody wants to see a berm, 6 or 8 feet high. That's just not going to happen. We're going to spread it out. We're going to make it. We want to be gradual. We don't want to have large piles of dirt and stuff out in the field. Does that help you, Jeff?
Yes. And how far off of the property line do you think that's going to be? Up towards the top, up around 135 Pheasant Run?
Yeah, it's probably going to start. Well, are you 135, Jeff?
Yes, obviously.
Oh, okay, very good. I know I've talked to you in the field too.
Yes.
So right by your area, that's a different scenario than what you'd see further south.
Okay.
And I'll probably talk to you a little bit more. We're trying to decide if we want to have a berm at the back of your property and prevent stormwater from even getting onto the town property, or if we want to continue to receive water from your parcel and let it drain into the system.
Okay.
You got a preference on that, Jeff?
I would have to hear more details on it.
Yeah, we should probably talk in the field. Maybe can you shoot me an email with your phone number?
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, Jeff, that was just one of the details that, as we move forward, we got the basic concept. We got a good grasp on the basic concept, and some of those small details that we need to work out, as we go forward and before we start construction.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, the next person I believe is Dave.
Well, hello. Hello.
Hi, Dave. Dave, thanks for being patient.
Oh, no problem. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for addressing this issue. It's been a long time since we can walk in our backyard. Very frustrating. I do have a couple questions. We're on 95 Pheasant Run. We're adjacent to Pete, lower toward the bottom of the street. It seems like the main bowl or pool of water is way at the top of the street. I'm going to estimate, I don't know, 5, 6 houses up. I mean, something like that, maybe.
Yep, easily. It could be more. It's up behind the 119, 125, 135.
It's pretty far up there. So what does this swale actually do to benefit 95 Pheasant Run and Pete and John, who's a little next neighbor lower than us?
Yep.
I'm a little confused.
Well, what we did is we started off at the high spot, which is the bowl, and we're trying to drain the water out of the bowl to the east and prevent it from going to the north across the private properties.
Right.
As we grade this swale further to the east, this swale and the combination berm will pick up any water from the town property that's flowing to the north onto the residential properties. Can I say that it's going to pick up all the water? No, it's not. Any rainwater, snow melt, whatever that falls, between the berm and the private property and your property line, that's going to, we're not going to impact that small swath of property at all, and that's just going to continue to drain as it's always drained for the past,
so pretty much
years,
yeah,
decades,
Pretty much for 95 Pheasant Run and around us, it's pretty much going to be the same situation with, I would imagine, no improvement.
I'm not gonna say no improvement, Dave, but you're gonna see little improvement or little benefit. You're not the key thing that we're trying to do is we're not gonna make it any worse. We're taking the water
Right
from the high end and we're moving it down to the low end, and you happen to be sort of in the middle.
Right. So it sounds like the only thing we can do, and I'm not a civil engineer, but it sounds like swales between each of our properties would probably benefit a little bit, but I can't see that it's getting rid of a huge problem at the top of the hill, but really not, in my opinion, not really doing much at 95 Pheasant Run.
I'll give you that. It's a fair statement. There's little benefit, but we just can't, there's no way we can pick up all the water without moving the swale further to the property lines. And then we hit all those encroachments. So, we're trying to make it as a comprehensive neighborhood solution. But it's like, yes, some will benefit more than others. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, and no, we appreciate the effort. It just sounds like we're going to be kind of on our own down here.
Well, I mean, Dave, send me an email and with your phone number, and I can meet you out in the field. I mean, this is the first that I've really had a chance to talk to people on the lower end of Pheasant Run to see how bad the situation is, and maybe we need to do more down there. Maybe we can do more down there.
Right. No, and again, I appreciate it. I'm not trying to pick you guys apart because you're helping us, so I really do appreciate it. It's just I'm kind of selfish right now for myself and my neighbors that are directly around me. And,
Understood.
And it's really terrible over here. It's never been that way before. It's just bad. You can't even walk in your backyard. I mean, I got a pool in the backyard and it's pretty much a swamp. You can't even walk back there.
Well, Dave, I mean, that's why we researched, the history of this parcel fairly extensively.
Yeah.
Over the past 6 months, doing deed researches and research at the clerk's office and looking at, zoning maps and planning maps and engineering maps that various developers have on file. And we just don't see what's really changed over the past, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We just don't see any changes. Excuse me.
Yeah. There's a neighborhood scuttlebutt. Again, this is just hearsay that Harris Drive, when that was put in, created the problem. I mean, I really don't know any detail other than, rumor about that. I hear things like water table changed, all sorts of things happen. But when I drive home from work, I go past, what street do I go? Where there's a swale there.
Oh, no.
In the middle of August, that thing's full of water. It just doesn't seem normal.
Vivian, sorry.
Vivian Street, I apologize.
Vivian.
Oh yeah, that again, that's just the low area that there's poor drainage down there.
Yeah.
That's problematic to say the least. We're not able to fix that problem yet. That's
right.
That's the west end of Pheasant Run. That is on my to-do list.
Right.
And that's a much more extensive situation to require. But getting back to, I think I can debunk any, theories about Harris Drive. I mean, we've looked at the drainage system at Harris Drive, that neighborhood. It's fairly extensive. It's fairly comprehensive. It virtually all drains to the west.
Yeah, it drains the opposite way.
Yeah, that water that goes to the west, it never reaches Willard Avenue. Never.
No, I got you. I saw the map. That's pretty good. So I guess maybe what I should do is get some time in the next few days to set up an appointment with you to come out here. Maybe.
Sure.
I don't know any other way. I mean, I'm no expert, but it just seems like swales between some private properties here might help the situation.
Okay. I'd be happy to talk to you, Dave, in the field. Once we can see it, firsthand, and see what you guys see it every day. We only see little snippets, when we go out and do our field reconnaissance. So you guys know way more than what we do.
I mean, what's really odd in our backyard, we're on a slope. The backyard goes higher and higher and higher. And the weirdest thing is, at the highest part, it's mushy. It's a swamp. There's water shooting out of the ground, which I really don't understand at all. It's really strange. Anyway, so let me, in the next few days, let me call you and set something up with you. So maybe you can come out here.
Look forward to that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, sure, Dave. I look forward to meeting you.
No, and I appreciate everyone's help. We really do. It's just a mess over here.
Okay, the next person with their hand up is Rick.
Hi, Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Hi. So we're at 173. We're the farthest west. And I know over the last year there's been some clearing in that. I guess that would be like your access way in. So my question is, are you planning to do more clearing on that side? And then yeah, well, that's my first question.
Okay.
Um,
Let me, I can fill you in on that. So
Okay.
essentially from the bowl to the west, your parcel, behind your property and probably 3 or 4 parcels going further to the east. There should be little to no clearing. I can't say none, but that's simply just going to be our access way into the work zone from Pheasant Run. So there's really not a real need to cut down trees. Would we be clearing down timber? Yeah, we'll be moving down timber out of the way so we can get through. We may have to, clear some understory and some underbrush. But I mean, really, our plan is to pick and choose the path of least resistance. And we don't want to cut down any more trees than we have to. I mean, that's work. And not that we're opposed to doing work, but we don't want to make any more unnecessary work, than we have to. So there should be fairly limited, hopefully no cutting of trees on the western end there, but I can't say there's going to be none.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. I just didn't know how much like construction was going to be going on to the like right next to our house, like to get into the work zone.
Got it. Right. I mean, our plan is we plan to have a balanced earthwork, meaning a balanced cut and fill. Again, which means we're really not importing or exporting any soil from the site. That's our game plan. Hopefully that comes to fruition, or if we have to import or export soil, hopefully it's a real minimum or very minimal amount. But we really don't have plans for hauling in extensive amounts of soil or rock, or even hauling out anything really. It should all be self-contained on the site. Whatever we cut, we're gonna fill and use on site. That's really our game plan. Again, to reduce the amount of truck traffic and equipment that you're gonna see. For the most part, I mean, it's gonna be a small construction crew is what you're gonna see back there is, dozers and excavators, backhoes, maybe a dump truck, just fairly small construction equipment. I mean, that's really what the town has. I mean, we don't have big scrapers and big equipment. We just don't own that type of equipment.
Okay. I like Peter mentioned. I also just I guess worry for all of the animals because we also see a lot of wildlife come through. So it is in my mind as well. And we have red-tailed hawk nests in the woods. So I just, I guess I'm just concerned for how much would be cleared.
Essentially, the clearing should be limited to the work zone. The work zone is really about 1 acre in size. Again, the parcel, it's a 40-acre parcel. Just breaking it down, that's about 2.5% of the parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Gary, this is Rick Stachin. I don't know if you're aware, but when we moved in here like 16 years ago, and there was an existing pipe from our property into that drainage ditch through the woods. I don't know if you're aware. I think it's a 4 or 6 inch pipe. And I've actually had to tie into that to keep water out of my yard. I just want you guys to be aware that it's there, and I don't know how deep it is in the woods because the equipment might crush it. So I just wanted to make you aware that it was there, and just to keep your eye out if possible.
Yes, I've seen the pipe in the field. Can you shoot me an email just flagging that for me, and I can add that note to the drawings?
Okay, will do.
Thank you. That's all for us.
You're welcome. Nice talking to you.
Thanks. You too.
I think that's it, unless anyone else has anything else, if they want to raise their hand. Peter?
David mentioned, excuse me, David mentioned that he'd like to get together with you. I'd like to also be at that same get together with you and Dave, just to discuss a few things about the water flow and in relation to the swale to our backyard.
Sure, Peter. Yeah, shoot me an email. If you want to coordinate with Dave, maybe Dave and you can copy each other on your email. But yeah, I welcome the opportunity to meet you guys in the field.
Yep. And like the others, I'd like to compliment you guys. I did talk to several of you as you came through the backyards, and you're very professional, answered questions, didn't have all the answers, and you were very upfront about it, and it was well appreciated.
Great, thanks, Peter. I will mention that to the staff that's been supporting this project.
Okay. I believe Jeff has his hand raised. Go ahead, Jeff. If you could unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was just wondering if we have access or if we could get a copy of this presentation.
Yes, I was planning to post it to the engineering webpage, where I will post the 4 different options, as well as the presentation will be posted to the public part of that webpage.
Okay, thank you.
If you've ever been, we're in the process of updating the information that I have on the engineering webpage, but and I wanted to do the presentation before I posted everything, and depending how the presentation was received, might control what I post. But I'm very comfortable posting everything that I've posted up here that I've discussed on the slide or discussed in the presentation.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else.
Jeff, Jeff, it might be a few days before I'm able to get that stuff posted. I know Cindy's out. I think she's out today and tomorrow. So it might be next week before I'm able to get this information posted to the town webpage.
That's fine. Will do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe Peter has his hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one final question. You had mentioned about cost of the project. Is this cost going to be passed on to the residents on the street or through the Newington taxpayer? How is that going to be handled? Was it come from the fund?
Essentially, we're planning to fund the $10,000 roughly that I talked about would come out of the drainage CIP fund. CIP is Capital Improvement Plan. It's one of the accounts that I control as the town engineer, where we have money set aside for doing drainage improvements like this throughout town. That's exactly what that fund is for. That fund is funded by the taxpayers in Newington. There is no separate or special assessment to the folks on Pheasant Run or anywhere else. It's just pooled money, pooled funds that are shared for the benefit of the town.
Oh, thank you, Gary.
I don't see anyone else for public participation. Gary, would you like to conclude or?
I'm good. I think it's a great lively discussion with the residents. I really appreciate that. Obviously, if you have you want to meet me in the field, I'd be happy to meet you in the field too. Shoot me an email. Email is probably the best way to reach me. It is on my contact information. It's on the letter I sent you. It's on the town webpage. It's a fairly long email address, so I'm not going to spell it out and repeat it here. But email is the best way to reach me. And I appreciate everybody's comments and concerns. It's really just great dialogue, good lively discussion.
Okay, so as of 8:10 p.m., I will conclude this meeting and stop recording.
Thank you, Heather.